He has talked to me about it. He has a really important thing he has to attend. So,
Oh, that's nice, Mr. Chair.
thank you.
Very quick.
Thank you. Yeah, quick off the mark this morning. So Finn's not here. Bevan, where's he?
He's here. He's just stepped out of the room for a moment.
Okay. So I think we did really well yesterday. The only breach of the rules was by myself, and it was at the very end of the day. Welcome, Councillor Bevan. Pleased you could join us.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay. I think we're going to have to watch our manners this morning. Ken, would you like to come up and bring your beautiful book? You can show.
Yes, okay, right. For anybody that wants to...
Yeah, hold on. No, you can make that announcement up here. I'm going to give you time.
Full on. Alan would know this. He would have a copy of this one, right?
I've got one.
Have you got one,
You've
Alan?
got a copy? Good.
Limited edition.
Limited edition, we got one back in 76, I think it was. And there's only about 25 left at Council, Napier City. But it's important why we're here today.
Ken, before you start, I'd just like to make my announcement. I haven't clicked any clocks yet. You've got 10 minutes, and 10 minutes you can use all yourself because it's your moment. And
Yeah,
time.
well, look, the important thing is I've had a stroke right in 205, and I can't speak fast.
Okay.
You have to give me time to get the points out, and it's important. Look, I'm speaking for 2,500 people that have signed a petition that they want to fix that road out there to the port. People cannot sleep at night, me included.
Okay, Ken, and I understand that. And,
Okay,
my thoughts
so
with
here
you,
we
but
are.
I still have to be strict on the 10 minutes because I've been strict with everybody else over the last 2 days.
Right, in front of you...
So everyone knows you, so you don't have to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you.
Okay?
In front of you, you've got a new addendum. It's very important if you read it. There's 3 questions I'm going to ask you. That goes on top of our original submission that we sent in to you 7th of December, or 7th of November. So that was the original submission we sent you. To that, we've got the addendum, which is 3 questions that you've got to ask yourself before you decide on whether to privatise the port or not. We say no, and we've already spelled it out in our first submission, because the Port of Gisborne did exactly that in 205, and it's a disaster for Gisborne. So anyway, the first question we ask you is, how much is enough? Where are your plans for enhancing the environment for the people of Napier? That's all we're saying. If you've got a sign, we used to have it protecting our environment. When I started with coming here in 2000, your logo was protecting our environment. Now it's enhancing our environment. Well, whatever, makes the same thing. So we're asking that question. We haven't seen this yet. And we live out there by the expressway, anywhere to the port. I couldn't care, because friends over here live at Darheri, and look, they can't sleep there either. We all have the same problem the Marine Parade had, and you got rid of their problem and gave it to us. Now we've got double trouble. Okay, so the question is, where are your plans for enhancing us? Because we have to be in the game. I came in front of the Hawke's Bay Regional Land Transport Committee 2 months ago and asked to be part of it. We haven't had a response yet from Alan, but we're expecting it soon. We need to be involved to help you guys through it all. We can't do it alone. We have to work with you, and you have to work with us. That's the end game here. So the second question must be, if you accept to sell half the shares or half the Port of Napier, how will you protect Napier's people from truck noise, vibration and air pollution that we suffer from? And the PCE report from 205 has made clearly to you that is an issue that you have to address. And you haven't done it yet. and that's 13 years ago. Now that new report that I gave you today, that's in the handout we gave you, came directly from the PC office last week. I've got the backup letter that says that copies available to us all you have to do is write and ask for a written copy and they'll send it in the post. So it's a real copy that you've got now. They sent us an electronic copy last week. So the PC report in 205 provided you, that we have provided you, has recommended you provide mitigation acceptable to the residents, affected residents, in consultation with them all. We're waiting. Alan knows this. I've been around to this place so many times and he's had enough of it. I've had enough of it and we've all had enough of it. My son is sitting over there now, about to go to Germany. I suppose half of it's the reason he can't sleep. Now, I can't sleep. I sleep with headphones on, listen to radio all night. It's not good enough. People can't do this to people. So the Port of Napier should be doing what they should be doing. And this book says it all. If you look at the book, I've got all the pages referenced, the two particularly in 1939 and 1959, where the board goes back to the government twice and says, we got a problem here. First time in 39 was our breakwater port. We can't handle the freight, the rail freight. Will the Department of Rail take it over, please? And that's what the chair asked at that time. And he got the results. They did. They came to the party. They took it over. So you should be asking the same thing. Of course, the Port of Gisborne, McKnight, after a meeting in June 15th, wrote a letter that night, sent a copy to us. He sent it to Kiwi Rail CEO and asked him to request government funding to open the rail to Gisborne. Now, we're asking the same thing from you. If you go to the government now, as this Port of Napier book says your port and your harbour board people should do. You're the harbour board people now. So when you ask for money, don't forget us. Ask for the funding to put noise walls up, put proper signs there that say things like, respect our quiet zone. I saw these in America. We can do it here. Why not? Those trucks, it sounds like we're at the Miani Speedway, or we call it Pyramid Speedway here, not an expressway, a speedway. True. That's what we're getting. We need this. Okay? So the last question has got to be, we're here to help. We're here to help you. We're not here to cause trouble for you. If the past history shows in this book that the Port of Napier Board has on several occasions, since 1939 onwards, always asked the central government for funding, upgrades and services, the government, you ask the government, why not now? That's all we're asking. Look, you guys need to look at this seriously. When we saw the railway open over there with Alan that day at the port, Napier, on that day, Shane Jones was there. I talked to him, and he said the same thing. Well, you guys need to speak up. I'm here with the money. I just need you guys to say something. That's what I'm telling you today. Just send what Ming Foon did. Do the same thing. You've got Ming Foon's letter there. It's in your file. I gave you a copy June the 15th. He sent it to Kiwi Rail. You sent it to Shane Jones. Say, we want full rail facilities at the port, passenger freight, the whole lot. Give us the money so we can do what we have to do. But don't privatise, because you'll go back to the square one where we are in Gisborne. We're fighting against Gisborne Port because they don't want rail. And you're losing all the freight to Tauranga because we drive there all the time. You ask Steve Wetherall, he'll tell you. Man freight, Braid, he'll tell you that. They're shipping all the freight up there now to Tauranga. We're losing it to the Cannies and Hastings. That's why they're putting people off jobs. So if you lose the rail, which you are, if you don't speak up, you'll lose the jobs too, and maybe the port. You know, in the end, mate, we're here to help make things better for everyone. And we've got to enhance the environment of everybody, not just the people in Marine Parade or Taradale Road or anywhere else. Everybody's got to be included here so we can be a family together. Not just one, but all of us. So I'd like people to ask me questions because, look, there's not enough questions asked. And I've got a mountain of it in my head. Before I have a big stroke and lose it all, I'd love you to ask me questions.
We've got time for one question, Ken. So do we have one?
Question I have for you is it seems that your issue is about the noise of coming from the port rather than the ownership of it. Is that the case?
Well, it goes hand in hand. Look, Rick, you can't have a horse without a cart. Or you can't have a cart without a horse, brother. So we have to go back to the basics. It's what your friend, we had a big agreement about this when we had a big, large public gathering. Gentleman over there was in it from Hariri, and the MP for Napier stood up for us then. Now, Labor MP stood up in the press and said to the port, you've got to deal with this problem. The port slagged him for this, the MP, saying it was not, you should keep your nose out of this sort of thing. You was off base doing what you said. But he spoke up for us. And that's what we expect to have. But you see, you can't have this kind of thing where people ignore what's going on out there at Expressway all the way to the Port of Napier without coming and talking to us and saying, what is it we can do for you?
Thank you, Ken. I'm afraid we're out of time. Is Janet your wife or daughter?
Right there, yeah.
Can you got a spare copy of that sign?
Yes, certainly.
Wife or daughter? Janet, would you like to come up? You're related to Ken, I assume?
You'll have to give this correct.
Oh, no. He could stay up here.
I agree with that.
Plead the fifth. Okay. Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate your enthusiasm. And just to say that we are conscious about the noise that comes from this industrial activity. So, Janet, you heard, so you've got the 10 minutes, like everybody else, and if you could just introduce yourself, and you could plead the fifth if you like, but councillors, it's quite good if they know where you fit into the scheme of things in Hawke's Bay.
Okay, my name is Janet Crispin. Yes, I'm married to Ken, have been for 40-something years. We have had a property in Peremai since 1974. And we've raised our family there, and we're now into the third generation there. I have been chairperson of the Peremai Residents Association, and that was when I originally came into the issues here when the Kennedy Road overbridge was built. I wanted to just give you a few facts. It won't take me long about the expressway. It was originally designed as a commuter route from Hastings to the airport, not as a truck route. Trucks weren't even in the picture then because of road freight regulation. Most of it went on rail. Since deregulation in 1983, road traffic has increased considerably everywhere, and the expressway is being developed as the heavy traffic route to the Port of Napier because the other areas of Napier didn't want it. Port traffic has doubled over the last 10 years, and according to your figures, it's 25% in the last 2 years, and is forecast to increase another 57% by 2028. Hastings boasts the expressway allows heavy traffic to Port of Napier to avoid travelling through too much of the Hastings urban area. Napier is not so lucky. The expressway passes right through the western suburban communities. As I said, I became involved through the Pirramai Residents Association, but it affects parts of Taradale, Green Meadows, Tamatea and Ahuriri. Each have individual problems. We don't all have the same ones, but it's basically the same cause. Unfortunately, during this time, the focus has become more on economic performance and less on environmental and social well-being, and the lack of mitigation will continue to impact on the health, well-being and property values of those living alongside. The Kennedy Road overbridge was built to carry heavy traffic over the top of local roads, which is the opposite to what happens in other parts of the world. They put the heavy traffic on the level and the local roads over the top. Economics trumped environment here. It was the cheaper option. The Kennedy Road overbridge has only the basic guardrails rather than concrete barriers that are used on the Miani Road overbridge and any other bridge we've noticed in our travels around this part of the country. Again, economics trumped environment. The expansion of the port will only increase the problem as no consideration is given to the adverse effects created by the increase of heavy traffic. The port have basically said they're responsible for port noise, but they're not responsible for the traffic going to and from the port. Any privatisation of the port will increase the focus on economic performance to the detriment of the environmental and social impacts. Who is minding the gate? We have made submissions to City Council, Regional Council, Land Transport Committee, NZTA, but no one has the power or the inclination to resolve the issues. I have to give credit to Alan here. He's always let us speak before the Transport Committee. He's tried to encourage NZTA to step up to the plate, but it doesn't happen. Hawke's Bay Regional Council motto used to be protecting your environment. Now it is grow Hawke's Bay. Hawke's Bay Regional Council has to protect the residents and their environment when making its decision. And I guess, Ken said part of it, we need to be consulted and we need to try and resolve some mitigation for the increases in the traffic and the resulting noise, pollution and vibration issues, and find a solution as to what can be done to help. And that's about it from me.
Thank you, Janet. We have time for questions. I just want one. It's clearly a really serious issue for the families living around the motorways that lead into the port. Have you had anyone independent that have said this is what you need to do? I mean, how big is the problem? Is there a solution to it?
Well, the Parliamentary Commissioner's report in 2005 gave some possible options, but we've said, we've spent many years, we say to NZTA, we need noise barriers, we need lower speed, we need, smooth road surface, and they just say, oh, we can't do it, we can't do it, we can't do it. So I've got to the point where I'm saying, I'm through asking for things for you to do. I'm saying, well, you guys have all the expertise on hand. Why don't you come up with the solutions? Don't expect it from me.
Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your submission, Janet. You talked about you're concerned that the privatisation of the port would take the focus away from, or make it even more challenging for the port to focus on environmental and social needs of the community. Would you therefore be looking at supporting option A, which is to keep the port 100% owned by the Regional Council?
at this point, yeah.
Peter.
Actually, I'm not quite clear if that's your position or not, because I get the impression that if there can't be some mitigation of the road noise, you wouldn't want an increased volume of traffic going. Is that what you're actually telling us?
Well, there's two issues here. There's the increase of the problem with the expansion of the port, and privatisation leans more towards economic benefit, so there's not going to be so much concern on mitigation.
No more questions. Thank you
I've
very
got
much.
one.
Oh, you have? We didn't have a hand up.
Well, we normally cut us all off, so we don't have enough time. But anyway, it seems to me that the only other possible route to solve this is to send more trucks down Marine Parade. Would you agree with that?
No, I'm not saying. I mean, we've inherited this problem because of Marine Parade not wanting them, but now there's also the new Awatoto link, so everybody is putting the trucks onto the expressway. We're saying, okay, we get it. We've got the problem, so mitigate for us. Don't. Where else is there to go apart from a truck route round the back of Taradale, maybe? But
isn't that the problem, that there's been a choking off of all the other routes to the port? For example, putting enormous pressure on stopping trucks going down Marine Parade to the benefit of those who live on Marine Parade, but it's shifted the problem to you. So don't you think the Napier City Council, which has initiated this and benefited from it, do something to help mitigate the problem?
well, we've tried approaching them. We've made submissions to them, and they just throw their hands up and say, no. I mean, it was their fault that the properties were actually built alongside the expressway to start with, although it wasn't the route that it is now. But when we had Michael Cullen and Robin Dunlop come out way back in the old days, they said all the houses on the expressway side of Clarence Cox Crescent should have been pulled down and had earth bunds there to protect the rest of us.
Sure.
So the PCE report will go through and tell you that it was partly Napier City Council's fault for building that close, but then, as the PCE report said, who knew back then what was going to be now?
I think it's reasonably predictable.
Anyway, we have run out of time, Janet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I thought it was very insightful, your presentation. Thank you. Gordon. Gordon, are you? Welcome. You can sit down, Gordon, if you like.
Yes, I will do.
Yeah.
Yes, just get the paper sorted out.
So, welcome, Gordon. Good to see you. You have 10 minutes, and you can use the whole 10 minutes yourself, or you can, if you want questions from councillors, just manage that within the 10 minutes. And it's really, I think you'll be pretty well known to most people around this table, but it's quite good if you introduce yourself and say where you fit into the scheme of things in Hawke's Bay.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. My name's Gordon Vogtherr. I'm 93 years old, and it's not fun any longer, but we still take interest in public events. Oh, by the way, I'm an earthquake survivor, and well, I was at Mahora. I had my first day at school at Mahora.
Yay, Mahora, eh?
And incidentally, I had my last 6 weeks at Mockford in the standard 6. Right, I better get moving. My submission's in 2 parts. The first was done a few weeks ago, and last night and this morning I changed my mind somewhat, but I'll try not to bore you. We've got our port have your say. I agree with the Council's decision, but with additions that Hawke's Bay ratepayers and residents of Hawke's Bay have a preference with time to purchase shares before public sale is available. That's what I came up with first. This is part 2. There are 2 important points. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council shall be working in conjunction with Port of Tauranga. They've been there, done that. No consideration of locating to Awatato. I think we all know the difficulties that are here now. We've just come round from Ahuriri, and there are lines up of trucks with huge logs on. You know, it's not the right place. But I realise that there are other problems too. No consideration. Oh, to Awatato. I thought that was quite an interesting idea. I don't know what the water situation is, the sea water, with regards shipping, things like that. However, if the decision is to sell up to 49%, it's imperative that the ratepayers and residents of Hawke's Bay have a preference with time to purchase shares before public sale is available. Say a month of time. This is where I have changed my mind at 5:30 this morning. I'm against the sale of the Port of Napier. That would be an easy way out. Selling a great asset belonging to the people of Hawke's Bay. Hawke's Bay Regional Council members, you'll be gone in a year or 2, and we've lost our port. You council have no right to sell the port. You'll be gone in the near future, and we ratepayers will be left without a port. That covers it fairly much, as I thought. But this morning, I woke up very determined that the port is not to be sold. You people will be gone in a year or 2, and we will be left with no port. No way.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm really interested. You had that major change of heart. What brought that on?
When I first wrote it out, I was only going on what had come to light. When I put my head together and used my brain, I say no. That's one of the biggest assets we've got here in Hawke's Bay. And you guys want to sell 49% of it. No way.
Any other questions? Peter?
Yes.
Oh, and then Alan. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Vogtherr, a submitter a couple of days ago made the suggestion that what we could do in order to retain ownership of the port locally is to issue shares to all ratepayers, which would be paid through rate demands. How do you feel about that?
No. If there's to be, if the public are, if the ratepayers are to become shareholders, that they'll come up with the money, as the outside share brokers would be doing. They would be coming up with the cash. No good putting it on the rates. God damn it, everybody wants to put up the rates.
Alan.
Well, thanks, Gordon, for your submission. Just so we're completely clear, your first position was that you would support the sale of a minority interest, allowing the regional council to retain control. But you've now come to the conclusion that no shares should be sold at all. Is that correct?
Well, there were two steps in it. The first one was that I would want, if you're going to sell, that the Hawke's Bay ratepayers
Preference.
has a preference.
Yes.
But I've thought more, read a bit more, learned a bit about what's going on, and no sale, whatever.
No sale at all.
If you can't do it with Hawke's Bay money, don't do it. You obviously haven't got the money.
That's right.
But the port is probably Hawke's Bay's greatest asset, and you guys want to sell half of it. No show.
Okay.
I'm surprised at you people coming up with that suggestion.
It's one of the four that we considered. No decision's been made yet.
No, I know. But we've got to get in quick, don't we?
Thank you, Gordon. One more question? I think they've all got your message firmly and clearly, Gordon.
Thank you.
Thank
They're
you.
stunned. They know when they're getting a hiding. So you've delivered it. So thank you very much for your
What I found interesting was the article in the paper a couple of nights ago. Who's the reporter for Hawke's Bay today?
Down here, down the back.
Oh, she's in trouble.
Get into it. Launch into it.
That opened my eyes a bit and made me think again. That was a good one. No shows mar the hearings on Napier. No, the hearings was no good, but the article was good.
I think it's lying.
Thank you, Gordon. Really appreciate you coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you tripping over my thing? Oh, where's mine? Mine's going to help later.
Come on, you're the youngest.
No, not serious.
Is she younger than you?
No.
Good.
There you go.
Thank you, Gordon.
Yes.
Les.
So, yeah.
Good to see you again, Les. So welcome to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Now you have 10 minutes. You probably heard because you've been sitting there for a bit.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you want councillors, you need to calculate for that. And it's really good if you can introduce yourself and just say where you fit into Hawke's Bay. It's useful for councillors to know that.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to make the submission and to speak to it. My written submission was very brief, as it was done at the last minute. However, I've had a chance now to expand and clarify my thoughts. and for my presentation today. And I do have a copy of what I'm saying today if you require it.
Yes, we could have that afterwards.
Now, I have a particular interest in the port as I was the first company secretary and financial controller from 1988 to 1997. That period was an area of significant development for the port following the phasing out of harbour boards and replacement by port companies. Growth was driven mainly by the need to provide a full container service, which required the purchase of initially one and then shortly after a second mobile harbour crane, together with supporting mobile plant infrastructure and also new marine equipment. A new wharf was built during this time to accommodate growth in other trades, particularly logs. The port has continued to grow, and I have no doubt that future major developments are necessary to accommodate this continuing growth and to benefit the whole region. However, it is disappointing that the council consultation document does not provide details of the projected increase in ship numbers, cargo volumes, revenue and expenditure, or resultant profits to confirm the viability of the planned works. This lack of a business case for port expansion has understandably been the subject of considerable criticism in the media. Without more information on the port's future earning capacity, it is difficult to fully assess the merits of the proposed expansion, much less the funding options. A major concern I have is that the consultation document is heavily focused on the impact on the council, not on the port. I repeat that. The consultation document is focused on the impact on the council and not on the port, which I think is a mistake. With the exception of option A, all of the options include provision of additional funds for the council to invest, which does not have any direct relationship to the funding of the port expansion. The council is taking advantage of the requirement for funds for the port to diversify its investment risk. While this may be another worthy objective for the council, I don't believe it should be driving the port funding decision. It is interesting to note that the breakdown of the port's capital requirements includes $139 million for replacement of existing assets. This represents 43% of the $323 million to be spent over the next decade, as listed in the document. There would appear to have been little or no consideration given previously to the provision for the replacement of these assets. It is also interesting to note that $45 million has been paid out in dividends to the council in the last 6 years alone. During this time, the debt and equity ratio has increased from 23% to 29%. Considering that the council inherited the bulk of the shares at no cost, it could be argued that the council has treated the port as a cash cow without giving adequate consideration to future funding requirements. However, the past cannot be undone, and looking to the future, it is essential that decisions are made that ensure the viability of the port and that control of the port remains firmly in local hands to ensure it continues to serve the needs of the wider Hawke's Bay community. The first step should be for the council to make public the financial justification for the proposed expansion with sufficient detail to reassure the stakeholders that it is viable. Assuming that there is a robust business case to justify the proposed expansion, the best funding option for the port is one that maintains the greatest level of ownership by the council. While technically 51% is a controlling interest, the wishes of 49% shareholders cannot be ignored, and to ensure effective control, a lesser percentage would be desirable. Using the example of option B in the consultation document, sale of 25% by a public share offer would raise at least $100 million, which after sale costs would provide sufficient to clear the existing port debt and provide a small balance for the council to invest. Alternatively, sale of 25% to a friendly investment partner, provided it raised sufficient to clear the debt, would be an even better option. While the council has put forward 4 options to fund the proposed expansion, they do acknowledge that they may choose to combine options or modify them. My preference is for a modification to either B or C, namely the sale of 25% of the shares to clear the port's existing debt and allow the port to raise the necessary funds to finance the development. Finally, it would be remiss of me if I did not raise a reservation about the location of the proposed Wharf 6. Logistically, the proposed location adjacent to the container terminal is ideal. However, the berth is relatively exposed to the open sea and may be unusable in certain conditions. From my recollection, when I was at the port and various expansion options were being considered, this was identified as a potential issue for such a berth. I have been told that improved mooring systems will overcome most of the problem, but there would still be times when the berth could not be used. It would be interesting to know what the estimated level of this unusable time would be. Thank you again for the opportunity to present this.
Thank you, Les. I'm sure councillors have questions. I would like to kick it off. What percentage of dividend do you think is of profit, excluding capital, but a percentage of profit would the regional council be reasonably taking?
Whatever is appropriate to balance the needs of the council against the needs of the port. And I don't think you can say there's a fixed percentage.
So if you're investing, to put another question there, if you're investing in a company, and you're just an investor, you and I and people around this table, what percentage of profit would you expect to get?
If it's a purely commercial operation driven by commercial reasons, I wouldn't like to give a percentage, but I think that would be greater than what you might consider from a company such as the Port of Napier, where it provides a community benefit as well as a return to shareholders or other investors.
Okay, that's fair enough. Paul?
Thank you, Les. You mentioned that one of the amendments of option B or C would be to reduce it down to something like 25%.
Yep.
Do you appreciate that that comes with a cost in terms of the return we would expect from the listing, or private sale or sale to another investor in terms of the return we could expect to get?
Yes, but then you will get a bigger proportion of the dividend from the port company for the 25% or 24% that you've not sold.
No, that's cool, because my question was, are you prepared to accept that lesser amount? And obviously you are if you expect to receive a bigger percentage of the dividend. Yep.
The more you sell, the less your dividend, so one offsets the other, I would think.
We have time for one more question. Rick?
You, like others, have used this term and it's always taken as a pejorative, cash cow. What would you define as a cash cow?
I would define as a cash cow where insufficient funds are left in the organisation to fund their ongoing requirements.
How much funds has there been left in the Port of Napier?
Well, over the last 6 years, and I haven't been any further back in the records, you've taken about 59%, I think, in total of the dividends.
That's
I
correct.
left in 40.
But how much has been left in?
40.
Well, that would be 41%, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That make it therefore over 40% being left in is now deemed to be a cash cow.
But the point is that the shares did not cost the regional council anything other than the proportion they bought from the Manawatu area, of which I can't remember the percentage. Alan, can you?
12.
That was
8.5%.
8.5%.
8.5%. The rest of them, it came at no cost to the regional council. So they should really have been looking at what the ongoing funding requirements of the port were before they decided what was an appropriate level of dividend, in my view.
Came with a bit of debt, but
Yeah, it came with a bit of debt, but not a
We have
lot.
time for another quick question. Peter?
It's a really interesting line of thinking that you're giving here. The consequence of us leaving enough money in the port, as you said, on an annual basis for it to look after its own capital requirements would mean a lumpy dividend stream to the council and at a much lower level than we've currently had. Would you as a ratepayer be prepared to fund the balance of the council's annual requirement?
Well, can I put it another way? If you hadn't inherited the shares, how would you have funded the rates? How would you work out the rates?
By an increase in rates, that's
Exactly.
the only source of funding.
So the ratepayers are actually benefiting from whatever return you're getting from the port.
Yes.
All right.
So I'm wearing the port hat, I'm not wearing the council hat.
Or the ratepayer hat.
I know, I'm ratepayers because you got the shares virtually at no cost. So whatever you're getting from the port is a bonus.
Thank you, Les. That was very good. You can see that you inspired the councillors to think about it, that's for sure.
That would be great.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your presentation.
Paul's chair.
Barrie, is Barrie Crabbe here? Thank you, Barrie. Welcome, Barrie. So you have 10 minutes and calculate for questions if you want questions. You don't have to take questions. You can take the whole 10 minutes yourself. And it's useful for councillors if you introduce yourself and say just where you fit into Hawke's Bay. So that's just a useful.
To say that again?
It's good for councillors if you just tell them, introduce yourself and say where you fit into Hawke's Bay.
First of all, I don't agree with any of your options, all right? There's a lot more to be done here. I've lived here in Hawke's Bay all my life. Chairman of the West Shore Residents Association, so of course have over many years had dealings with the Port of Napier in relationship to what they do as far as West Shore is concerned. And what you're proposing here is going to make it progressively worse. And I'm coming to the end of my days in this world, and of course I hope I won't see the day when we do have a very high sea, and because of what has happened in the past, we will inundate the whole of the inner harbour, and all the assets all over there will be in a pretty poor state. That's your future, with sea level rise and so on. Good morning. How have we gotten to this mess with the Port of Napier and its Board of Directors, Hawke's Bay Regional Council Incorporated? 186 million in debt, and with no explanation from them as to why. This now has become a major problem in the financing of the future development. They knew it was going to happen and allowed this debt to occur. These people get paid very well to do their job, and private enterprise would have got the sack for creating this situation without a satisfactory explanation. Are we going to have the same problems that we had over the dam? 20 million down the drain, with no return at all over 10 years on the investment. Now the Port of Directors want a further $186+ million to build a new wharf and fairways. This build over the next 10 years will go in excess of 350 million, and with inflation etc. will be much higher. We all know this. Do we want this? Can we afford it? Is it necessary? Can we justify it? What are the guarantees for its success? You and I know it's not a deep water port, and because of its geographic position, is very exposed to the Pacific Ocean. It has very little protection and is vulnerable to easterly weather. A classic example, just a few days ago, 6 ships lay in the bay waiting to berth. They waited 3 days for the weather and the sea to calm down. Some went to other ports. This applies quite often with our cruise ships. Even after the dredging to deepen the channels and enlarging the swing basin for larger ships, with high winds and rough seas, will still be a pilot's nightmare. So as they do now, these ships will bypass us and carry on to Wellington or Tauranga. We already have access to the world markets now. Last year's figures from Ross Allen, a business analysis, 3.958 billion in exports, 1.046 billion in imports, a total altogether of 5.004 billion. He also tells us how to fund the proposed additions without selling shares. Have you discussed these with him and others who have written to the paper, etc.? Have you had all of your 4 proposals peer reviewed? I listened to some very qualified speakers in this very room and other venues over the last weeks. They were accountants, engineers, etc., with some very good solutions and excellent backgrounds. Your own Paul Bailey said increased port fees per container. Shippers and exporters might moan, but it would cost thousands more to use another port, plus time to do so. Unison, Hawke's Bay owned, looking into investment and could become the only investor needed, a win-win situation for us all. The National Development Fund, to name a few. Have you properly investigated all of these? We must have full control of our port and using our own CEO and employing the right staff with the right experience and expertise. The board should go. Ports of Tauranga, 54% owned by the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. Has major interests in Northland, Timaru, ports, etc. Inland ports, Auckland, South Auckland, Waikato, also very good access further north of Auckland. Excellent rail access alongside these, with easy access to Tauranga via the Kaimai Tunnel, also servicing Hamilton, Matamata, etc. Therefore, they have control of the shipping for Taupo, Bay of Plenty, and north and more. This leaves Napier Port with all its restrictions, weather, rough seas, very little shelter, road problems, rail problems, the list goes on, as their opposition. We also compete with Wellington, Christchurch, Dunedin, which are deep water ports with better protection and very low maintenance. You haven't waited to see what the government national shipping strategy for New Zealand has to say. They could very well make us a coastal shipping port. Where are you going to put all the extra containers, etc.? The port area is already under pressure. Are you going to put in inland ports and connect these via a rail system, which is the best option? Or using the overstretched roading system, the new roads are already feeling the pinch now. Noise, toxic road dust, and environmental condition, all of this puts pressure on people, noise, toxic road dust and the environment, polluted rivers, the list goes on and on. Do people and the environment matter to you? I know the pressures that big business and market money and money makers put on you. I hope you all listened to David Attenborough talking to the world leaders a couple of days ago. If we don't take a hard look at what we are doing over the next 20 to 50 years, we might not exist. I won't be here to see that, nor was most of you. I am also aware of the pressure put on you with a dredge available to develop the fairways, etc. for the Napier Port. But think hard, don't be bullied. You have the right to take a step back. We elected you to make the right decisions for our future and our children's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. That was a very... That was a very good submission. Thank you very much. We have time for one question. Tom.
Thank you. In your last few sentences there, I think you used the word step back. What I hear you saying is basically put a cap on the port as it stands, effectively making it a stranded asset as far as the future is concerned. It can handle whatever throughput it can handle today, put a lid on it, and that's what we live with as far as the future of the region is concerned and its exporters are concerned. Is that your position?
That's what I believe. Do we really want it? You know, what studies are there? And we have all the professional people out there that do these sorts of things. But they all disagree with one another as well. And I really think you've got to take a deep think about what's the future for Hawke's Bay, and is it all that necessary? You are being pressurised by people who make money out of all of this. But what about the Hawke's Bay? What about the people that are here?
Well, those people who make money also create jobs, do they not?
It does create jobs, but all sorts of other obstacles keep on coming up. You know, you as the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, one minute we're talking about the pollution over there in the inner harbour and pollution elsewhere. You're going to increase all those problems by increasing the size of the port and so on. So just have a think about it, eh? Think about the roadings. Think about all the effects on the environment. These are issues, they're very wide issues. I don't have all the answers, but by crikey dick, I've been around here for a long time, worked on the expressway there, on the partnering group, saw what goes in with Great Lakes, see what the Great Lakes are doing right now, and they are helping on the pollution or pollutants going into the estuary. That's what's got to happen with other areas around here too. Those are the things we should be concentrating on. Leave the port alone.
Thank you, Barry. It's a very good submission. Thank you very much. Scott. Welcome, Scott.
Sure.
You have 10 minutes to use it. It all belongs to you, so you can use it all yourself, or you can leave some time for councillors to ask questions. And it is useful for councillors to introduce yourself and where you fit into Hawke's Bay so they get a bit of a feel for our background. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name's Scott Kersley. Ironically, I was one of the people that built the Kaimai Tunnel. I'm here really. My background has, I've lived in Napier essentially my whole life. My father still lives in Ahuriri, and I see him regularly, and he's always amazed. He says, they're going to run out of timber. And I said, I don't think they are, actually. I think there's actually more coming. He says, it just comes constantly. I said, yeah, well. Anyway, so I know Ahuriri well. That's my village. So that's that. As the reason I'm here is because I have spent a large part of my life teaching design. And if you teach design, you have to study sustainability, and you have to teach that and so on. So I have spent a lot of time studying that, and have probably quite an insight into it because of that, and am very interested in it. So I'm the sort of person that when the IPCC puts their report out, which they did last month, I read it. And I would like to talk about that today a little bit, because I think that's, important. So thank you for the opportunity, and I will just work my way through this. Okay. I think it's a shame that our political terms are so short. It places you under enormous pressure to get things done, and done quickly, and to leave a legacy and leave things better than you found them. This is not an ideal situation when issues are more complex than ever, and the future of humanity as we know it is on the line. In my opinion, two of the big issues facing us are social inequity and environmental challenges, led by climate change. As governors and councillors of us, I believe it's your job to make life more livable for all of us now and in the future. I hope you have these issues at the forefront of your minds when you are making these decisions. So how does this relate to the port issue? Firstly, the social equity issue. By selling half the port, you are allowing the rich to get richer and the poor poorer. You are already the well-off. You are. You may also have the resources that will allow your families to buy shares if they're floated. Thus, it would be difficult for you to see option B as anything but a good move in the current free market. Some of you stated the other time I spoke to you in this room that there was no way you would put up taxes. In fact, selling the city's only major asset is doing the poor of Napier is doing the poor of Napier a much greater disservice. At present, the profits from the Napier port are largely retained in the Bay. Future councils will be faced with huge costs from relocating hundreds and possibly thousands of people because of sea level rise. And of course, it's a threat to the port. This will really mean some big tax increases in the future. Any money in the public coffers that they have will be hugely appreciated by these future councils. And secondly, I'd like to quote a section from the latest IPCC report on climate change. Limiting global warming to 1.5% would require rapid, far-reaching and unprecedented change in all aspects of society. The IPCC said in its latest assessment last month that keeping it below 1.5 will have clear benefits for the natural ecosystem and will go hand in hand to providing a more sustainable and equitable society. The decisions we make today are critical to ensuring a safe and sustainable world for everyone, both now and in the future, said Deborah Roberts, co-chair of the working committee. This report gives policymakers and practitioners the information they need to make decisions that tackle climate change while considering local context and people's needs. And here's the crucial part. The next few years are probably the most important in our history. So, if you believe the scientific community and aren't like our friend Trumpy and waves the whole thing off as fake news, how do you apply this information to the current situation you're in? What does rapid and far-reaching and unprecedented change in all of the aspects of society really mean? What is the situation we're in? I'm not altogether certain exactly what the problem is that you're trying to solve. I think perhaps there's quite a few of them. But I suggest that applying a vigorous design process is really important, and that I think could help the situation a lot. I think you are going far too fast. But doesn't mean things like, for example, that the export of logs actually doesn't go through Napier. You know, from what I gather, and it's only hearsay, don't have any facts on this, but what I gather is that there is a wall of wood out there waiting to be exported. There is huge numbers of trees that are 20 years old and that will be needed to be shipped. From what I can gather, there are other alternatives and other ways in which they can actually be shipped. I think that needs, and I don't know, you may well have looked into that in great detail. But I would like you to spend some time on that if you haven't. But doesn't mean, this sort of major change we're going to make doesn't mean sort of going away from our universal model of growth at all cost. Maybe the port is as big as it should be. Maybe the port is the limiting factor in our horticultural industry. Maybe this will then free up investment and ideas so that we can actually look at alternative ways of making money in Hawke's Bay. I would also suggest that no sooner do you build another wharf than it will be at capacity again and more expansion will be called for. When I look at this issue and the decision making around it, I wonder if the big questions I have highlighted have been used to focus the decision making. It does seem that haste is the order of the day. The other day that I spoke to you, I felt the decision had been made and you were applying a consultation process because you have to. Subsequently, since sitting here and listening over the last couple of days and watching you, I actually believe that that's probably not quite true. I think you have been presented with some interesting ideas, and I think you hopefully will be going back to the table. But I would like to see alternative methods, as I've said, explored. And I wonder this. I wonder what decisions you would make if you were a 20-year-old with a degree in ecology. You know? I wonder what decisions you would make if you were if you were not one of life's winners, but that you were born into different circumstances. If you have to build another wharf, and hopefully you don't, but I would like it to be as environmentally friendly as possible. Fund it through user pays and higher taxes. Save before you build. You actually aren't in a good financial position to actually build at present. In summary, I'd like you to be more expansive in your thinking, reapply a design process to the problem you face. Don't sell the major asset that most of us own collectively. Think about the social and environmental impacts of your decision, and most importantly, think about the future generations. Are you doing the best thing for your grandchildren? Will they thank you for your decision? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Seems everyone's getting a clap these days. But that was very thoughtful. We have time for one question. Rick.
Wouldn't you think that a 20-year-old environmentalist, if confronted with an issue of where to invest $130, $300 million, would prefer to see that investment going into issues mitigating?
Sorry, where's that money coming from?
Well, this is the contention here is the port needs $130 to $300 million, and that's what we're looking for is the money here. We're to borrow it or to get an outside investor. So this is the figure.
Yeah.
So, and one issue is that to maintain 100% ownership of the port, the council should divert all of its resources into doing the investment of the port itself. What I'm asking you the question is, because you posed the question, I'm asking you to go back, would, in the light of a 20-year-old environmentalist, do you think that person might rather than invest that sum of money into a port, would invest it into tree planting to stop erosion, invest it into measures to mitigate against the inevitable rise of sea and climate change? Don't you think they would do that rather than put the money into a commercial entity?
I certainly do. I think they would be interested in trying to future-proof Napier. Yes, I do. Anything that was going to sort of help with it. I mean, essentially my argument is this, is that we have a port which makes a lot of money.
Makes some money.
Yeah, well, a third of the regional council's rates, which is a decent amount of money. I believe that should be put aside as much as possible because for what is coming. Napier is one of the worst cities, as far as I can see, in New Zealand for having to deal with sea level rise.
All right.
Thank you, Scott. We'll have to end on that note. But that was a good note to end on.
You're quite
Thanks.
right.
Would you like a copy?
Yes, certainly. I certainly would like a copy. Thank you very much.
Go with the short chair.
Sorry?
Thank you.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Rick. Dan.
We're 10 minutes late, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're running late.
Changed from the last couple of days.
Sorry?
Changed from last couple of days.
Wow.
Long questions, perhaps.
Only two.
Anyway, you're excused, Councillor Marker. Say hello to the Prime Minister from us. Dan, so you have, welcome, Dan. You have 10 minutes, and if you use up your whole 10 minutes, you won't get questions from councillors. And it's really good to introduce yourself and say where you fit into the scheme of things in Hawke's Bay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will introduce myself as I progress. Thank you for the chance to make my submission verbally. I started off at number 90. I'm probably down to 61 or 67 now if those are dropped out, so I must have as long as I need to talk. and I can talk for a long time. My name is Dan McKnight.
You have 10, Dan.
I am a heavy plant operator at Napier Port. I drive the big machines shipside, and we have to do something. I work with nightly, daily, the constraints we have to deal with with our 100-year-old wharf. And so I am so enthused with the opportunity to actually make this resource we have work for the greater good and for our safety. We're the safest port in the country, and that's the way we need to be. So I am now I work for Napier Port, but formerly I used to be the Hawke's Bay Museum and Art Gallery Collections Manager. So if you dig deeply, my name is on the gift certificate to Hawke's Bay Regional Council when I received the Harbour Board archives into the museum collections, along with a cheque for $25,000 to care for it, which was nowhere near enough at the time. And so I bring a lot of different angles to this discussion about how we're going to address the issues facing the port and the Hawke's Bay region through this process. And it was through the process that was engaged in with yourself, Mr. Chair, and James at the port. It's taken me through a whole lot of, I suppose, emotions about this process, a lot of frustration, a lot of sadness and anger. So I've rewritten a speech lots of times, and I've just screwed it up and written some points which I hope to convey to you. My point was, well, it's taken 2 years of investigation. Why do we have 5 weeks to rush through it, whereas to apply for a passport I must allow 6 weeks? And I think this is more important than just a passport application. So I wasn't going to speak, but I thought I'll regret it if I don't. Now, I mentioned my time as the Hawke's Bay Museum and Art Gallery Collections Manager. I spent a lot of time with that archive with Dr. Robin Gwynn at the period, and I took a lot of interest in reading Robin Gwynn's article, and then I was surprised with your response, Mr. Chair, and your comment that you had made about in the paper about the record number of submissions to this. I thought it was inaccurate. At no stage had Mr. Gwynn said that the port shouldn't pay a dividend to the regional council, and it disappointed me that through this important period of clarity of information that the message was not supported in his article, particularly when the comment was made about the complexity of the issue and thus being a reason for not a referendum. I thought it's nothing worth you will lose sleep over, but probably be disappointed that you had made that error. And when I looked at that, I thought, well, as a regional council, you have got James Palmer, a political survivor, as your charges, and he is new page. He is a person who I have a huge amount of respect and engagement in how he delivers the message. He's an amazing speaker. I know through the period of concern and agitation at work that there was a lot of solace received from the way that you spoke to us, James. And I think it would be beneficial for the council to learn a lot from how James knows how to manoeuvre politically. I'm sure he's a good example, isn't he? Councillor Barker, he survived. I know you're a survivor, Councillor Barker, but James has got a lot to teach all of us. So how I got here, I am a Mirihiku boy. I whakapapa to Whanuaho, which is an island off the coast of Stewart Island. I first began working for Mr. Russell John Beck, QSM. He started me in museums back in 1995. His son is Peter John Beck of Rocket Lab. Now, Russell Beck said to me in my early development stage, he said to me, rules, don't be scared, don't work with the rules or be constrained by the rules. Rules are applied today to deal with the scenario that we're dealing in. If we're trying to change the scenario, then we have to write new rules. And I look at the documents that have been presented, and I think there's been too much of a constraint in the thinking of what we can actually potentially do to solve problems and create opportunities. I raise this because my manager and my new director was Wayne P. Marriott. He's with MBA, and he was my museum director at Nelson Provincial Museum. And when we were raising funds for our new museum, we went through the process like we did for the Hawke's Bay Museum. And the Minister of Culture and Arts and Heritage, Helen Clark, had set a fund called the Museums Fund, and it was to be the last brick for funding for a new institution. Many museums went for that brick before the funding was there. Nelson, we had found a good proportion of the money, and Wayne Marriott is an innovative person in his MBA, and what he did, he raised a bonds issue to fund the money that was needed for the port. And I was so I was blown away essentially by how innovative and how onto it he had. So if you had the money and if you wanted to buy into the museum, you could do that, but we didn't have to sell the museum. We didn't have to sell the port. And so I thought that's why I raised that, because of the limited scope for raising the potential funds for the museum. There's this suggestion there is the money out there in the Hawke's Bay community for those who wish to buy shares. Well, then why can't they buy bonds without selling the museum? The Nelson City Council were the underwriter for those bonds. I'm aware that the Regional Council don't want to have so much money locked up in a single asset, which became a point of contention when Robin Gwynn and I went through the archive, how the Harbour Board was seen in when it became into the Regional Council, it was seen as a community resource, and the Regional Council were custodians of the port. Why has it now become a management asset for the Regional Council? And I think that's something that doesn't sit so well with me. At what point did that change? I understand the business acumen, which must be applied to resources, but I think it's something that we need to be very, very aware of. Now, this is on my page of opportunities. The previous speaker was talking about design brief and ecology. When I was at Hawke's Bay Museum, I spoke to Mr. Neil Taylor, who was the city manager. We were due to be building a new museum, and I said to Neil Taylor, we live in a sunny Hawke's Bay. Why don't we, through BP Solar, invest in solar energy? We show ratepayer responsibility, innovation, social responsibility, and we cut our costs. And for big community projects, BP Solar give you the gear. So you've been gifted your point of difference. I can say this, we live in a solar house, we're 100% solar, we feed back to the grid in sunny Hawke's Bay. If you look at the port, all these sheds that are there, most amount of power consumed through the port is in the summertime. So I see opportunities here as a regional council managing our resources. Our point of difference from the wharf where I drive up and down, every day there are people at the lookout looking at the Hawke's Bay scenery and at our port. That's our point of difference. We show social responsibility, community care and resource management by generating the power that we can. Nobody else is doing that, and that's why I look for that point of difference. I want to see smart leadership. I think that's why we have a very fresh council compared to the previous, and that's why James Palmer is your CEO. And so that's where I believe, James, it's now your time to shine as the CEO. We will follow you. It's your time to share your vision for us to get behind and the direction in us to follow. If you can get such dry material delivered in a very engaging fashion, then I think you should be given the mandate to sell a vision for a greater, healthier port that's delivering, not one that's to be sold. This, for some reason, it comes to Councillor Barker. You've said that wisdom is old men, with respect, Councillors Hewitt and James as well, who are planting trees under whose shade they will never sit. However, James, and with respect, Councillor Hewitt, you run the risk of being among a group of old men whom have agreed to sell the land upon which the trees are growing. And that's my concern there.
James and I will sort it.
On there.
And I'm just going to finish, which is a motorbike quote, Councillor Barker, and that because the thing that rose with this fear that the money's locked up in a resource, and my major resource is my house, like most people, and I insure that. And based on that, fear is temporary, regret is permanent. And that's me.
Thank you very much, Dean.
Thank
It
you,
was
Dean.
excellent.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate that.
Really excellent.
Any questions?
A bit more philosophical
questions,
than we
no.
usually get, which is appreciated.
I can't help that. I want a question, please.
No, you can't. Sorry,
Oh,
mate.
come on.
Sorry, mate.
If you hang around for 10 minutes, it'll be lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
No, you must be hungry.
No, if you hang around we'll break and I can have a chat with you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Barbara.
Can we have James? I'd like James up there, actually.
Is Barbara here? Oh, welcome, Barbara.
Paid Dan.
Yeah.
Especially seeing as though it's around performance review time.
That's it.
We might just bring him.
Thank you.
Welcome, Barbara.
Very much. I'm surprised. We can't really hear very well over the back there.
Now, welcome, Barbara. Firstly, I have to make an apology to you because I'm going to have to leave halfway through your submission
I'll be quick.
to take a urgent phone call, which I can't change.
That's all right.
So I will hand over to James at that point. You have your 10 minutes, though, and
I have got also
and
it in.
you are the last. You are our last submission, so...
Thank you.
Just a process issue, Chair, with the
Just keep mine.
Rick leaving. Who are you going to get to sit in the chair once you've gone?
Just see James will.
James can, but I can hand over to Neil. If you prefer that.
Peter.
Peter?
Okay. Peter. Peter. Right, Peter, when I have to leave, and I'm sorry I just can't change it. So, Barbara, the floor is yours, and
Thank you.
if you just tell the councillors who you are and how you fit into Hawke's Bay, that's always useful for them to know that. We're nosy, you know.
You're allowed to be. My history is simply that I'm a Hastings ratepayer and a regional ratepayer, and I'm going to bring a positive spin if I'm going to be the last. You have my full support for what you're proposing to do for Plan B. I don't see any reason why so many rocks have been thrown on the road, but I'll read out mine. Thank you for the opportunity to add some thoughts here today at this hearing regarding my online submission. As a regional ratepayer, I am of course interested in any proposed improvements that are being examined for any of our Hawke's Bay assets. I'm also concerned about any expenditure that is carried out to make these improvements. Despite the fact this is going to be what I feel the most beneficial way of raising money to carry out your proposals, I would like to make the following observations, and they are only that, observations, thoughts, that's it. If the majority of the vote goes for option B, can we insist on full transparency around how much funding this raises over the period of time? Can we have an agenda that has been created specifically for the proposed improvements? When will they be started? What the proposed timescale has been mapped for each stage of these improvements and with costings? I would, for one, would like updates at least every 6 months by either email or whatever method will work for the council. An update could also be an attachment to our rate demand, which I receive yearly. Whatever mode of communication for the updates we need as ratepayers, to see the progress at least twice a year, I would appreciate that. These updates could be set up to keep us informed whichever way the Regional Council finds most effective. Assurances to all the ratepayers that none of the money raised by the public share offer will be diverted to any other undertakings that the Regional Council has in progress or on hold. And has the Regional Council made any provision for how they will invest the money raised once the public share offer has gone through, and what type of accounts they'll hold this income in until work begins? Again, transparency of how this money will be handled is of prime importance. I would like to believe the Council will have specific bank accounts and only transactions relevant to the improvements of the port will pass through these accounts. Thank you again for this opportunity. You have my full support to undertake these critical improvements.
Thank you very much.
I kept that brief. You may go.
I'm glad to be excused, but I've still got a couple of minutes.
Oh, okay.
So,
Ask any questions.
Yes, councillors' questions. Paul.
Thank you, Barbara. You've raised a number of concerns that other submitters have also raised,
Right.
and I know have been discussed around this table, so that's cool. But I'm interested to know what you mean by rocks in the road. You say that people throw rocks in the road?
I've only sat in here this morning for about an hour, and I feel rather than engaging in this process in a positive way, it seems like everybody's trying to find an alternative. And I mean, I know we're all entitled to have our opinions and state those opinions. That's what this is all about. But I don't know. I've sort of, it sounded quite negative, some of it. And we need positivity. It's the only way to go forward. I wrote
Thank
down
you.
here.
Another question?
Yeah, thank you, Barbara, and thank you for your submission. My question is, when you've thought about making a submission and contemplated the merits of the port, do you think we do need to have the developments that have been proposed, that we need to, what brings you to that conclusion?
I think that the port has possibly not been utilised as much as it could have been in the last couple of decades at least, because no improvements have been carried out. And yeah, I just believe that it's got to, at some point we have to focus on something that's going to make the Port of Napier become more important than what it is now. And so yes, I agree with it.
You wrote something down.
I did. I just, listening to people, too many good proposals get shot down through the fear we as ratepayers seem to go through at the possibility of change and improvement. And it's all money orientated by the sound of it.
Mr. Chair.
Other questions, Tom?
Yeah, you expressed some concerns about financial accountability if this transaction were to occur. I want to just understand how you view what's going to happen. If there were a float of shares and it generated a pot of money to be invested in other activities in support of the council or whatever, what is your understanding? Is your understanding that let's say it netted $100 million that we're going to go out and spend the $100 million, or is it your perception from what you've read that no, that's going to be invested and we're going to spend the earnings off of that? What's your view of what do you expect to happen here? Because you're very concerned about watching what does happen.
Mostly because if there is going to be a public share offer and it nets a good amount of money, you're not going to just rush in straight away and start all these improvements. That money will sit there till there has been a project sorted out, set up and agreed upon. I'm just saying that I have a little bit of concern that sometimes it could be diverted somewhere else temporarily, but never end up coming back.
So what I'm trying to test here is that the proposal says that it will be put in a fund, basically, and protected in that fund,
yep.
And that only the earnings off of that would be spent, so that we're basically trading one asset for another. We're trading a chunk of a port asset for an invested asset that's sitting over here, presumably earning more money than if it were left in the port. So it's really, but I'm curious as to whether that's the way you've read the proposal, or whether it did seem to you that all that money would be dumped tomorrow into tree planting or something.
No, I mean, I believe that you've got enough people with accountancy skills to work out the best way to go forward with this, with whatever is raised in this share. However, it makes extra interest on it. Again, you've got enough people with accountancy skills that are going to say, well, that money there is not, we've got X amount that is going to be into the port, but this money is extra over and above, and if we can use it for something that's really, really needed, fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I just don't want that entire money that's raised by that public share in any way diverted off to any other kind of, short of a tidal wave, which we've talked about here today as well, and you've got massive things that you need to be sorted out, and you have got a little bit of money that's been not used on the port and is not needed to be used on the port, and it needs to be helped to get the city up and running again, well, I mean, who would complain?
Thank you.
But I,
Well done.
Thank you very much, Barbara. That was fantastic. Thank you.
thank you.
Really appreciate your thoughts.
Good luck.
All the
going
way from
ahead.
good old Hastings, eh?
Am I the only one that's come here from Hastings?
No, that might be.
Hawke's Bay?
No, we had Danny Vic yesterday.
Oh, good. I'm
long way
pleased to hear
away.
that.
It's a long way. Yeah, that's it. Do you hear what our nature rep said? It's a long way away.
I know this really. It's a 50k round trip.
Did you get passport stamped at the border?
A couple of rivers to cross.
I actually had to pay to get over here. Just kidding. No, I drove over.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for appreciate that. So that is the end of our submissions,
I was
councillors.
glad I was able to, because that's the only way I feel.
We are stopping for lunch now. I do suggest that we do reconvene afterwards.
What time? 1?
Yeah, 1 o'clock. Those of us who are still here.
And in this other context,
Unless you want to reconvene just for a workshop.
keep them separate, but when you get into this
Question whether you want to commission that external advice in public
I
session.
get what the bigger picture could be. You sure have
Guys, Paul, do you want an open chat with in front of the public, or do you want to convene and have a
workshop.
workshop?
Of the anticipated.
Well, I mean, it doesn't worry me, Mr. Chair. We can make it in public, not public. I don't care.
I'd prefer it in public, but it doesn't. I'm not fussed one way or the other, because either way, the questions I want to ask, I'm going to put out anyway.
Tom?
I don't care.
I think it should be a workshop, Mr. Chairman,
Me too.
for free and frank discussion.
And we're missing quite a number of our group.
People won't.
Peter gone.
He's over there.
Oh, there he is too. So Fenton's coming back for this discussion. He advised us yesterday, so I don't know whether he'll be back at 1. So we'll just be missing
It
Rick.
just avoids the politics, doesn't it, if you have a workshop?
Yeah.
Which is probably sensible, really.
Yeah, like I say, I'm happy. I'm happy with
That's,
the vote.
okay. Are you happy with that, Tom? So it will avoid people getting into political speeches. So, okay, we will convene as a workshop, and just because we have had some really interesting submissions, I think.
Stay in here, or are we upstairs, James?
Staying here.
We'll stand here.
But the workshop today, James, is only for further information that we feel that's come out of the submissions, so that you can prepare it for whenever we have our deliberations.
Correct, which will be public documentation and public debate. So it's really just to get from you what are the areas you want further advice on, follow on from the discussions we've had over the last couple of days.
So it's not intended as deliberations at all.
Correct.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, could I just briefly say in regard to the Crispin's submission that there has been work done to cut down the noise, low noise chip overlay. However, it only goes over a restricted period of the expressway, so there's more that can be done, and we'll keep the pressure on that. But
Yeah, well, that's one of the subjects, because I mean it's pretty hard for people living in those areas with big trucks. I mean, they are getting worse. It's not getting worse because of the port.
they're getting worse because they're getting bigger, more tyres.
Yeah, getting worse because of that reason, and more product.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say, Alan, that it's NZTA that's dragging the chain on that?
Anyway, that's for the workshop.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Let's break down.
They have done.
The meeting is closed.